hope will go on for many years. The very first event, Cecilia, thank you for inaugurating it. Very first event, Cecilia, thank you for inaugurating it. It's called Writers Without Borders. The title should be sufficient. We sort of ripped off a certain progressive mode, doing things X without borders. Sorry about that, although we did intend the progressive connotation. Our idea here is simply to work with some people around the university, as Writers House does already well, to team up with people and collaborate on bringing writers who, most of whom would not otherwise find a venue here, or we wouldn't be able to deal with all of the complications of travel. In Cecilia's case, fortunately, we didn't have all those complications. But in the case of a poet who we're bringing from China next year, another from New Zealand, and so on and so forth, as this series really gets underway, we're using this impetus to cut through a lot of red tape, or actually to fill out a lot of paperwork, but to do it with excitement as we're putting this thing under a banner. And I just wanted to thank the Office of the Provost of the University of Pennsylvania, Ron Daniels in particular, who really, I think the word is, pushed us hard to do this series and backed it up with some funding. I'm also, and Ron isn't here, but he will hear a recording of this, so thank you, Ron. I also am very, very pleased that Seth Ginns is here. He's an alumnus of the university. I met Seth only once. Maybe he was here to visit, and then I met him in New York, and he wanted to support the Writers House, and this seemed the thing to do. He's very involved himself in international culture and generally in internationalism, and he has supported this thing, and his support has leveraged the support, there's that verb, of the Provost, which is a really big deal for us. So Seth is there. If you don't mind just maybe standing up or waving. Thank you, Seth Ginns, for making this possible. Really terrific. Really terrific. I can think of no better borderlessness or border/borderlessness than Cecilia's work and Cecilia herself for inaugurating this. We're so glad you're here. I want to remind you what I teased you with a few minutes ago, which is that after this event, after the performance reading, I don't know if you can smell it, but there's some great stuff, and this will be a good chance to talk with the artist and among yourselves, so please stay for that. A pal of ours, a great pal of ours, Charles Bernstein, is here to introduce Cecilia properly. Thank you all for coming.
Of course, the most recent journey of Cecilia from New York to Philadelphia was not very difficult, but the longer journey from Chile during a time of repression and violence to exile in London to finally New York and now back and forth was a difficult journey. It's nice to catch you on the shortest leg of that particular pilgrimage. Cecilia Vicuña was born in Chile, and she performs her work throughout Latin America, Europe, and the United States. It's important to note that her work is as much a performance and a work of performance art as work of political activism, social activism, gender revolt, and literary revolution. She's been creating these, what she calls precarious works, ephemeral installations in the countryside, in rural areas, in cities and museums, and tonight here at the Kelly Writers House, as a way, as she says it, of hearing an ancient silence waiting to be heard. And she has taught her work in many different universities. She was one of the most powerful visitors we had at the poetics program at the University of Buffalo, where I taught, and just even this last week, a number of undergraduate and former graduate students have remarked on what a powerful influence she had on her couple-of-day visits several different times to Buffalo in the 90s. And her visual art, understood in that way, and performance has been presented at the Whitney Museum of American Art, at the ICA in London and the Whitechapel Art Gallery, and also at the Museum of Modern Art, along with a lot of other places. She's got a number of books. She has a set of her first books, which are written in Spanish, which many of which have been put online. by Ken Sherwood, old Buffalo friend and soulmate. And you can find that and links to her Penn Sound page and her own website if you go to her epc.buffalo.edu author page. And from there you'll find updated links to the other main sites that she has. And I'm now going to stumble over some of the Spanish names because I have a hard time pronouncing even English, so. How do you say that first one? Okay, I'm going to let that just be a silent echo. And two, published by the marvelous Peruvian-Argentine press Tzetse in 2004, and it's one of the most interesting South American presses right now. More locally, Instan, Kelsey Street Press, 2003, and I think we have copies of Instan, or did, on sale here tonight, and you can get those, and it's a beautiful visual verbal extravaganza. El Templo from Situations, 2001. CloudNet from Art in General, New York, 1991. Key Poem, The Precarious, the Art and Poetry of Cecilia Vicuña, edited by Catherine DeZenger from Wesleyan University Press, 1997. That's a marvelous collection about her work, and also with essays and photographs and documentation. And perhaps still the very significant founding work of hers in English from 1992, now sadly out of print. Unraveling Words and the Weaving of Water, and this was edited by Elliot Weinberger from Grey Wolf Press, 1992. This is a kind of key collection of this earlier work. I'm very happy to announce also that another former Buffalo student and friend, Rosa Alcala, is I guess translating and editing a collection from the wonderful Factory School Press, now located in Queens, and that's going to be called Templo e Saliva. Sort of, all right. Spit Temple. I could say that better. Spit Temple. And a massive project, in addition to that, is her work with Ernesto Levon Grossman as the editor of an anthology, which will come out relatively soon, of 500 years of Latin American poetry. This is not actually, there's no such comprehensive anthology that goes back through this period, and it's it's kind of an epic collage poem in the vein of Jerome Rothenberg, who fortunately will be joining us on these same stations and in this same place in just a couple of weeks as our final as one of the final visitors this time. And there is an interesting connection between Cecilia and Jerry, and they traveled through South America several years ago doing readings together. So there's a kind of interesting connection there also with this epic work of the Poetics of the Americas. She also edited a book which I found fascinating called Ool, for Mapuche Poets, translated also by John Bierhorst, and was published by Poetry in the Indigenous Language Series, the Latin American Literary Review Press, just exactly 10 years ago. In that book, she quotes a poet who she translates, Jorge Teeler, "My weapon against the world is another vision of the world." What poetry lacks, I would say, about Cecilia's work, in efficacy, it makes up for in conceptual power. Blake's mental fight, or as Jose Marti puts it in Our America, weapons of the mind, which conquer all others. Barricades of ideas are worth more than barricades of stone. Her Mapuche volume suggests a palimpsestic approach through the layering of Spanish, indigenous languages, and the translation into English. And this collage approach, this hypertextual approach to building writing, is extended in Vicuña's work through her use of weaving. And the woven fabrics that she creates, we begin to be able to inhabit, whether from New York to Philadelphia, from Philadelphia to Chile, and from Chile to that virtual reality that hopefully we will come closer to tonight. It is my great pleasure to welcome you here to Penn, Cecilia Vicuña.
I am borrowing for a moment your sound and your breath and Buenas noches. It is so nice to see you all here. It is difficult to come in a day when it is so beautiful. So, I was counting the birds that we were seeing. Did you see what I did? The birds we were seeing, I meant hearing. I heard only one bird, the chickadee in New York. And arriving in Philadelphia, only one fish. Fish, did I say? No, I meant finch. A flying fish, perhaps. Do you know we have them in Chile? Not in Chile, in the Chile that is frontal Chile, but in the Chile that is beyond Chile, crossing the Humboldt current. That's where they come. They're flying, not because they like to fly, just to escape being eaten. But my thoughts for you were about the invention of silence. Silence, 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 said the ancient Romans. They meant shut up. And then the invention of silence ensued as a metaphor for that which was not there. The pure creation of the invention of sound, the invention of silence. In reality, we are shutting up all species, all sounds. Looking about the wonderful gardens of Philadelphia, I saw only one bee. One bee. And the bee was saying, watch out. In the ritual killing of bees, we're killing our future food. Our future food. So before coming here, I sang to the one single bee. Abida, oh, 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 abida, 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 yo, 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 yo. They say that when the abejita, the little bee, hears the song, she and the flower that is hearing the song, they feel enticing to go do el polen. El polen in español is un polvito, a little fag. A little fag of the sound of the little bee going about, messing up her legs around, you know, the sex of the little plant. Florcita cochina muriendo flor. Okay, now we can begin. It's nice to sweat. Gracias a ustedes. That was a Vicuña thing. Huh? The ancient idea was that you could dream inside a Vicuña, and the dream will be carried by the thread of the Vicuñas. The Vikunias are melting, as you probably know. They are born at the foot of the glaciers where the springs are born. And the ancient myth says that when the Vikunias are gone, when the glaciers are gone, we will all be gone. So I thought, to oppose that melting of the glaciers, only our own melting will do. Melting our notions of who we are. Melting our thoughts, our sounds, our words, our writing. Melting, melting, melting the whole thing down. Only the two meltings talking to one another can come up with a new invention, perhaps. Perhaps. Okay. Do you remember, Charles? One day we met and I was doing this installation of threads crying at the drawing center in New York. The threads were hanging from the ceiling and the threads were becoming language, as you see here. And the poem says, lines undone by water, threads undone by air, undoing completes the doing, an encounter through dissolution. In the spectrum one color dissolves to let the other be. Love is light, they say. Quizá a color gradation in Quechua is a melting process, a transformation. Within kisses, you're changing perception imperceptibly. Weaving perception imperceptibly. A word moves a bit of air. Nachman of Braslav said, God is the essence of the written letters concealed in the dust of the poet's pencil. The Sumana Santaka says, to read in Thai is tivotak, tivoktak. To smash is to pieces. A song is the only material manifestation of the invisible reality. The Tayul Mapuche says. Tayul. Una palabrita deshaciéndose. A song is melting the bones. the boundary between the between boundary. She melts. A word lets you see the sound. Hear the image. In the Andes, people say an image heals and a textile sees. You don't put on a mask to be seen, but to see with the eyes. No word for beauty has no word. They say kisa. The melting down. The drying of an old fruit. An old woman becoming dry. Only the mommy, the dead dried in the sun are really beautiful. Hate becoming love. A color gradation is an effort of light to unite shadow and light. The rainbow has a motor del quizá. You're weaving an illusion, un destello that hits the eye. They hit the eyes. A lango in Java is not a noun, but a divine manifestation. Kisa. Experience must be transitory in order to be equal to the multiplicity of forms, the Baniwa said. Light was born from the disintegration of a Shashila Waka, the primordial being of all color. Light and darkness then are visible in one another. Saliva. Saliva de la menta a la salud de ustedes. Saliva de las estrellas, Shiriku, Yetaku, Speed of the stars, Shiriku, Yetaku, ya estás en Taren, el estado interior, al interior de las palabras, donde el ser se hace una conciencia auditiva. Inside words, Taren, the state of an auditive consciousness is born. Luz del habla, light of speech, habla luz, Taren. Labio del río. labio del agua, duna yepi, corazón del vientre, semilla yewan, enapue, meyoshi, el sol del pecho, corazón del alma, yo caricia mi otro corazón, are you becoming you? El nombre es su propia disolución. The name is its own dissolution. A sound is leaving low, is leaving knowledge. Cuyo la voz de Maya said. Itaku, 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 saliva. Mouth and teeth devour meaning. Wisdom is venom. Speech is the ritual killing of sound. The tongue is the serpent. The serpent. Tongue is the serpent. The tongue. Saliva, the venom. Sound dies and it's reborn in every syllable. Cariña, 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 said that. Itaku, 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 saliva. Salud. Who was that? Hmm? Oh, Felix is good. I love Felix. Oh, I love Felix. Oh, I love him. Salud, Felix. Felix is Charles' son. And one day I was doing one of these performances where I tied people and everybody was scared because I was strangling a few comers. And so, except that Felix was a little boy, and he came in and started to weave with me. Do you remember that? And in the part that I was not reading to you, Felix was also present. You see, because I leave out most of what I write. That's the idea. And look at what I was leaving out. He said, these things when I said, he said, who knows who said? These anthropologists are interviewing the shamans. The shamans are interviewing the anthropologists. I am unreading the reading of the shaman discussing bullshit to the anthropologist. I'm turning all that bullshit upside down for you and me to come around. The quality of knowledge in a perform is knowing that sounds are the presence of sacred beings. Speech implies a co-presence. Because sound is reciprocal. The structure of sound is a reciprocal exchange. Look. 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 The negation of sound, the negation of language is sound. Sound is the negation of language. Or speech is the suffering of sound. Was that the cariña or my misunderstanding of the cariña? Salud. Imagine how beautiful the Miss under, standing over there, and the under here, like here, and the Miss That's the idea in the native oral culture. You don't hit the mark. The mark is a no-no, and the hit is okay. So here is Cecilia as a young girl at the very beginning of the precarious works. This is a poem I probably wrote in the 60s. And Rosa Alcalá translated it in as best she could. It says Concha de Carey. Concha is both the cunt and the seashell. Concha tu madre, motherfucker. Concha Carey is the concha of the turtle being killed. Inside all that killing is the poem. Concha de Carey, empecé coleccionando pequeñas conchas de perla, fragmentadas y hechas polvillo. Me costó mucho reunir los pedacitos de aire entre ellas. Estuve cerca de tus piezas llenas de conchas azules y verdinegras, y que nunca se repitiera ni una forma, ni un pedacito, ni un aire entre ellas. Mother of pearl. I started collecting tiny nacre shells, fragmented and turning to dust, gathering the beads of air between them was hard. I was able to fill 2 rooms with shells, blue and dark green, without repeating one form, one small piece, one air. All were sleeping. A white dampness, a white vagueness dumped them. I don't know if a lot of time has gone by. Is anyone keeping track? What is the time? 6:37. Oh, so we still have a few more minutes before we eat. Okay? Okay. Okay. Yeah, it's true. Time is tricky. In the Andes, people say that space and time do not exist. They're really creating each other. And the other day, a friend came up and said, look, this man, Roland Barthes, he's saying the same thing that you are saying. How come? He is speaking about Japan. In Japan, they speak of something translated in Spanish as el espaciado, ma. The Japanese also don't believe in time and space. They believe only in the interval between them. The expanse of a space where they're creating each other, and you wonder who is echoing who. Who is echoing who? Quizás una palabra es la sombra de un sonido, el diálogo del alma con la muerte. Maybe a word is the shadow of a sound, the dialogue with death, as the Cariñas say. And now look at this. You have neuroscience coming up with books that read like ancient Andean oral texts. Every act of perception is a co-creation. idea of what you're seeing, hearing, has to be there for the process to be complete. Ages ago, I wrote this sort of essay, I thought it was, but people thought it was just noise. And when I read it in Chile, nobody understood what I was saying because I read it in Spanish, you see. So here, when I read it in a weird language, it's far more likely that you will possibly not understand too. It is constructed on the encounter of two words, which is oír y orar. Oír means to listen or to hear, and orar means to pray, as in oration. Oration is also a sentence, a phrase. So it begins, oír y orar en el origen eran la misma voz. El oído lo recordó el orificio de la O. Both are connected by a hole, the hole in the word O. O as in perception, A, W came to be in English, L, A, O. To pray is to listen, somebody said. La muerte está contenida en el cuerpo como el fuego en la madera. Death is in the body as fire in the wood. Sound is born as it dissolves. But the mind can only go where light has already been. Can only find the field that light already explored. The eye sees, but the mind conceives, reflects on the echoes of realities. True being is invisible. It is a sound. It is a sound. That is the desana of the rainforest. Only 300 of them are left. Only 300 of them are left. I was planning on doing a lot more singing, but it's not going to happen. So I'm going to skip a few of the songs I had in mind for you, so that we can come to the kitchen. No, mentira. But before, I wanted to tell you that I heard of the new hit. This is a world hit, and it is an inaudible song. Have you heard about it? It is a song recorded at such high frequency that only dogs can appreciate it. Nevertheless, it's a hit mundial. It's a global hit. It was recorded in New Zealand, and that makes sense to me. It's the antipodes, you see, the other side of sound. And before going into another space, I wanted to tell you about the word listen in English. That's one of the few words in English that comes from the actual northern hemisphere. Because silence, you already know where it comes from. It comes from the Roman era. But listen, that's old English. Listen, that's really high Germanic. It was I'm inventing, of course. Who knows how it sounded? Luti. Sound became in German umlaut. Kleanin, it really means in the ancient mother, father, sister sound in Greek, klein, to praise. And that is Clio from Claire, the muse of history, which is the muse of listening. So to pray is to listen was not so foreign to the old English northern people too. Bueno, and because it's time to go home, we're going to have one last do we really have time? Are you sure? Are you sure? Because my throat doesn't think so. My throat is a very tricky thing because it gets so cold around here. And then I start sweating and she is very unhappy. Okay, but she's unhappier if I don't sweat, so she's always unhappy. No, mentira. Mentira. She likes honey. And that's why I'm thinking of the bees. Can you imagine the bees going and us not paying attention to their going? One bee. Okay. So this poem I'm going to read to you is from the land of my imagined ancestors. This is in the Nazca lines of the desert of the south coast of Peru. Of course, I have imagined ancestors all over the place, but these are very favorites of mine. It says, writing is opposition, the plane and incision, light and shadow. The desert is inscribed by oxygen. Removing a stone, a different color showed up. A different color showed up. You know what they did? They went about pushing a little stone to make a line. Lines meant to see by an imaginary eye. Yamak nyawin, jamak nyawin, jamak nyawin. The eyes of the llama in the southern cross. Constellation up, up, up in the sky. The concept of Andean constellation is the reverse of what you think. Nothing shining, only darkness, the shape of the negative space. The Yama is really a dark, dark cloud. A dark, dark cloud. They went about dancing the lines. Dancing the lines. They went about dancing the lines. Pobrecita línea, pobrecita línea. It was their joy. It was their joy irrigating the land. Irrigating the land. American people came and they say, look, this is an astronomy book. They're really writing in the desert in order to create an astronomy book the size of the entire desert. But who knows? Who knows? In truth, each line points to a mountain where are the springs are born. Cerro, 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 cerro. And if you look at the art, the girls in the ceramics open legs, bull bass is played out, their clitoris throwing lines. You just have to mirror one and see the land out of the hill and the lines and the clitoris of the land. The mountain is the clitoris of the land. Wow. And that was supposed to be the introduction. The actual poem is about here, but I don't know if I will have the force, or do we or not? No, it's not true. Shall we end? No? Well, I am a sucker for the poem, but I don't know about you. Well, you can imagine what it is to imagine a world where these women are constructing this, metaphorical clitoris, the size of the landscape itself. Ha! And of course, not a single anthropologist, archaeologist ever saying that. Ever, 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 ever. Because they cannot see it. They just can't. I don't mean C-U-N-T. Or perhaps I do. Okay. A ver un poquito. I will not give you the entire poem. You will have to imagine it. But just a little bit. Libro de aliento, polvo y despedida. Libro oxidado, libro de tiempo y piedra removida. Libro de aliento, aquí me voy. Oxidized book. Text, dance, and abandon. Book of nothing, dust, and departure. Book of time and stone. Book of breath. Here I go. I ride with body dancing the muck. My hide of kin, the earth inscribe. Who reads the sign? The pampas tattooed, the red on the thigh, the traced, erased. Who reads the signs? Nocturnal sky, stellar dust. She in the third dried dustless. Ah, 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 ah. Okay. Thank you so much. Gracias. Okay.